don't I just be this guy?
That's not good.
No?
That doesn't promote your strategy.
All my ideas get me noticed. I hate this play.
So Osama the Hero centers around a kid in high school who gets a writing assignment where he has to write about a contemporary hero, and he chooses Osama bin Laden. And it's sort of the fallout of having written that in a neighborhood where people are already tense and they kidnap him.
Yeah, we're method in that sense. You know, if I want to be, you know, really in character, time me up. Exactly. Yeah, time me up, gag me for real, and let's get this show on.
And I think that's what makes it more interesting is when he's actually tied up and he's trying to get out. You know, like that's when you're like, if you have him fake, if you had it like that, he's tied up but he's not actually, and he's trying to get out of it, it doesn't look that like real. You know.
We'd actually done a number of rehearsals where I told Greg specifically to try to get out of the restraints without the others knowing. And in one rehearsal, he managed to reach into his pocket and phone for help.
Really?
Yeah. So, and then it gave the others something to play off of we're all fucking dead now, or we're all screwed if the cops find out that we're doing this. So.
That definitely adds to the stakes of it, you know, like even from now on, we're always kind of watching him because you're like, especially if that's like a real situation, you've got someone tied up, you're going to be watching to be like, well, hopefully he doesn't do anything, you know, you got to watch him all the time, you know, which I found really helped, so.
Even when he looks at someone else,
Yeah.
like in the scene, he's tied to a chair and he's got his mouth duct taped, and even when he shoots someone a look, it's like, don't look at me like that, because that can, somebody that's a victim and that's tied up like that can really affect you if they start trying to manipulate you with their emotions. So it's like, don't do that. Like, you just sit there and look at the ground, and then a couple times we have to set him straight.
It helps with the paranoia of the characters as well, and their kind of relationships to one another in the room in the room with this boy tied to a chair, and they're kind of arguing about things that have nothing to do with the situation. It's really a dark comedy. I keep describing the show as you're either going to laugh or you're going to cry. And when we swapped one day with another Fringe group and watched their show and they watched ours, and of 7 people who were watching in the audience, on one end 2 people were crying, in the middle one person couldn't even watch because they were so disgusted by stuff that was going on, and on the other end 2 people were laughing. So it's really a spectrum of, you take from it what you will.
Every individual is going to probably come up with something completely different, and probably relating to one of the characters more than one of the others.
That's what I think is great about it, is everyone has these moments that they're talking about things, and like it affects you. You know, like it could be something that for you, you're like, I don't really get that, but then for someone else, it's like, no, that really hit me.
Yeah.
What he said there.
Points
really
that they
hit me.
hear,
Yeah,
like the other day, like somebody, I think Mitch was talking about the same teriyaki. It's like, there's just images that some people pick up, or the moment of shock. I think that stuck with Hannah, and then others that they don't connect with as much. And you see these at the end, you see these 4 characters. I shouldn't spoil it. You see how they deal with a traumatic situation and how they deal with it completely separately in their own worlds, in their own way. And each person is going to, from the audience, is going to take after one of those.
And one of the beauties of the script is that all of the characters are just so whole. Like, you see their good sides and their bad sides and everything that comes with the whole package, and they're all so different, but they're all in the situation that, you know, how would you deal with it as an audience member if you were in that situation, and everybody can kind of go through that through the whole show, which is a beautiful thing about it.
Yeah.
My main fear with this script was that the actors might take it on and do them as 2-dimensional characters.
Villains.
Villains, exactly, and demonize it. And you can never judge the character you play, obviously. It's a basic fact in theater. And so it was really about trying to personalize it for these guys, really trying to get in the skin of the character and use elements of their own life to try to justify what they're saying in the script. With, obviously, a layer of imagination so it doesn't strike too close to home, but they came away sometimes with beautiful work from doing that. And I feel what I've been trying to do this whole time is really have the audience feel like they could be in the same situation under the same circumstances, and that there should be an element of fear in that. Because if the audience can look at the show and be like, oh, they're all crazy, well, I would never fucking do that, that makes no sense, then it gives them the ability to separate and detach themselves emotionally from the show and just view it as an outsider. Whereas I'm trying to invite the audience directly into the show to say, this is a reflection of yourself in society. My inspiration for wanting to take on this text was basically, I feel like the kind of psyche in the US right now and in parts of Canada is really along the same lines as some of the storyline of this show in terms of paranoia and fear and ignorance and a lack of thinking things through, so to speak. A lot of these characters all of these characters just act on emotional instinct. And kind of what happens when you don't take the time to reflect on decisions being made. So in the heat of the moment, things can go horribly wrong. And then the Boston bombing happened, and then the incident in Britain as well, with the gentleman having his head cut off. And suddenly this play took on a whole new light I even know the actors coming into rehearsal then, it was a lot easier for them to be able to just relate to it. Because in the play there have been a number of bombings taking place in the neighborhood, and then with the Boston bombings, and then
when that happened in the middle of the process, I was like, not only the Boston bombings, but the man being cut up in the middle of the street. That was like, wow. In terms of timing for this, was very, very pertinent. It made our play a lot more pertinent.
It made it a lot more relevant.
Yeah.
And I mean, even I remember when the Boston bombings happened, I remember actually like thinking for a moment that I was almost like a little bit scared to do this play. Like part of me was like, maybe it's a little too touchy, at this point, but then I mean, like now I think it's a good time for us to do it. But at first I was like, this is very close to our play. It might be a little touchy for some people, but I think it's good now. So.
Yeah, close to home.
Yeah.
And imagine if it was put up in close to one of those neighborhoods and something like that happened. You don't even know people's backgrounds too. I mean, there could be people coming to see this show that are from that neighborhood. Yeah. So it's you got to keep in mind that it's a play, but it's real for some people too.
For me, there's a lot of shows that I always enjoy being entertained, but for me, I know that I like a show if I leave the show and I'm still talking about it a day later, 2 days later, a week later, when I'm still reflecting on it and using elements of it to describe future productions that I'm working on, and just when it's brought up in conversation. I guess what we really want to have done with this show is to get people talking.